Hey friends, I hope you're doing really well. So I wanted to make this video about why I didn't go on a lot of retreats. So I think there's a lot of emphasis in the spiritual community on retreats, and especially in meditation community with different retreats you can do, or 10-day silent retreats, or all these different retreats that you can do. And I think retreats in general are valuable. It's nice to practice intensely for a while. To be able to do that in a nice setting is amazing. Often these settings are really really tranquil, really beautiful settings. So there's obviously a lot of value to retreats, especially if you have a good teacher present, if you have a great practice that you're doing. It can be really intense because you get to see, parts of yourself that maybe you don't see regularly at home because you're in such a different setting. You're in intense practice and you're forced to do that practice a little bit, or at least you're forced to make space to do that. And people are helping you to do that practice or facilitating you to do that practice. So I think, again, retreats can be super valuable. What I notice with retreats is that for me, I need that balance, or I've always needed that balance. So this is gonna sound strange, but I did a couple of retreats and I would get bored. I would just get very, very bored. Even though I love meditation and I love spirituality, I would just get really bored. And it's okay to sit with your boredom. Sitting with boredom is totally fine. So there's nothing wrong with those retreats, but I have something that I personally find much more valuable than retreats, and that's intense practice at home. Intense practice in your normal life. I think that's the most underrated thing ever. It's like people want to go on retreats to build this intense practice. I think the value that I've personally had, but also some of my clients have had with intense practice at home, is way more than with retreats, because oftentimes you go to a retreat, you do intense practice for a couple of days, then you go back, you do nothing at all, or you do little practice. That's what I see with most people. And actually that is helpful, but it's not as helpful as just a consistent, let's say 1 hour a day practice is more helpful to me than, let's say, you do 2 retreats of, let's say, 50-hour practice, and then you do nothing at all in between those periods, or you do, let's say, 20 minutes on some days. That's just not as helpful as an hour every day, because that momentum is really powerful, because you really take it with you in your day. So I love retreats, and retreats are great, but I went to a couple of Kriya Yoga retreats that were amazing, because the atmosphere, the meditation hall, everything is just pristinely beautiful, and I love that practice. And I went to a Mooji silent retreat, which was I think it was 5 or 6 days in the Netherlands. It was really nice, and there was not so much practice involved. There was some meditation, but not so much meditation. But there were 2 satsangs and then silence in between. And to me, it's just not. That was an amazing and powerful retreat for me as well. But it was just very different than an at-home practice. So sometimes you need a retreat or a teacher to light some fire for you, right? But then it takes a lot of time for you to kindle that fire, to make it your own, to to again and again make sure that that fire doesn't go out, but that fire is kindled. Is every time you try to put more wood on it, you try to take care of that fire, and from something which is sometimes just even a spark, you want to be able to be with that. You want to be able to give that more and more space, and to take care of it, because awakening itself, or especially at the beginning stages where you're catching fire, let's say, slowly, it takes quite some time for you to really, really build the momentum to then at some point it feels like you're going downhill, but at the beginning it feels like not so much is happening. And especially during that time, it's super important to just practice, because something is happening. It is happening, but you're not really seeing it yet. So it takes time to practice. It's kind of like with building a business. When you build a website, nothing happens. When you do a first post on social media, nothing happens, right? You post your first YouTube video, you get 0 views, or let's say your mom watches your video, hi mom, or something like that, right? But oftentimes nothing happens until later. So it's extremely important to slowly start to build that practice and keep that practice going. And that's why practice is, especially talking about meditation or self-inquiry or taking time for yourself to reflect, contemplate, is way more important than retreat. Even though retreat is like, that's the cherry on the cake, it's amazing, it can be life-changing, it's the spiritual highlight, we could say. But who cares about the highlights, right? It's not about the highlights, it's about that day-to-day, almost like a day-to-day grind, right? And in that way, there is this whole sense of, I don't have to do anything, I can just be with this, etc. And that's true. But then you take the time to actually be with that. You take the time to kindle that fire. You take the time to appreciate that, to be with that over and over again. It's not that it's a 5-second or 5-day thing. It's just a lifetime that's given or built towards this, right? So it's not something that's it's not something that should be taken lightly. So retreats, again, I love it, and retreats can be life-changing. It's very good for people that already have a great practice, and then they go on retreat, and then they fully immerse themselves in this, and then they get this really nice boost. And sometimes it's also good for people that are getting started on the path, right? But if you're on the path and you notice yourself just retreat hopping but not doing anything in between, then it's really important for you to start to understand that what is actually important is not retreat, but it's your practice. It's your day-to-day stuff. And making space for that, for this in your life is, you're changing vehicles. You're changing vehicles from a mind-driven life to a life-driven life, right? A deeper intuition that's coming alive in you, which is way more important than this mind-driven stuff. So it takes time to get there, and that time is time that you invest. And if you don't do that, that's totally fine, but you'll get the results that are representative for your efforts, let's say. So those are some thoughts on retreat. Again, I really like retreat, but I see that the effort for most teachers a little bit on retreat, because they can maybe tell you that, but it's not so much on practice. And that's my advice, is just practice, because it helps. Definitely. Much love to you. Bye.